Welcome to the OK Let's Learn podcast. My name is Kevin O'Keefe. This is a podcast for both kids and adults where we learn about tons of different topics each episode. And it's also a place where I tell stories and we read and talk about great books together in our OK Book Club. So today, let's learn and listen to the Olympians against the Titans, the War of the Gods, the original story of how Zeus became the god of gods in Greek mythology. So yes, this is a Greek myth story. And the best thing to do actually is to go back to my episode on the introduction to Greek myths. This will give you an overview of what's it about, where they came from, why they're important, why they're still around today. But this story is the original story, and this goes back to Hesiod, the author of Theogony, which is translated into the birth of gods. This was written 2,700 years ago. In 700 BC, right there in the beginning of the classical Greek period. So this is all about, like I said, the original story. And here is how it begins. The official title is the Titanomachy. In the beginning of Greek mythology, before there were humans, before there were heroes, before there were gods on Mount Olympus, there were the Titans. And the universe didn't begin with gods. It began with chaos, which was a vast, empty nothing. From chaos came the first gods, the first beings. There was Gaia, the earth. There was Tartarus, this deep underworld, this deep abyss beneath the world. There was Uranus, the sky. Well, Gaia and Uranus got together as the first couple, and together they had their powerful children who were called the Titans. There were 12 Titans, and there were two other group of children, and they were monsters. There were 3 different Cyclops. These were giants with one eye. There were 3 different Hecatonchires. These were monsters with 100 hands and 50 heads. The Titans, like I said, there were a lot of them. There was Rhea, there was Hyperion, there was Mnemosyne, there was Themis, there was Iapetus, there was Oceanus, and yes, the most important and youngest child Titan was Cronus. But you see, Uranus, he didn't like these monsters. I mean, who would? But he got rid of them. He imprisoned them inside his own wife, inside Gaia, inside the earth, deep in the abyss of earth. Tartarus. Well, Gaia was furious with this. Of course, she didn't like having her own children being locked up in her own body. But it was deep inside her, and she, like I said, was livid. The pain of having her own children buried inside her became unbearable. So she decided that her husband, Uranus, needed to go. He had to be overthrown. So Gaia got together this big kind of weapon, this sickle of stone, and asked her Titan sons to rise up against her father. All were afraid to do this except her youngest, Cronus. He was ambitious. He was looking to do something with his life. He ended up coming and ambushing his own father, cutting him down, and he overthrew the sky itself. From that moment on, Cronus became the ruler of the world, of the cosmos. But as Uranus was on his deathbed, he said something to his own son, Cronus. You, my son, will be overthrown one day as well. There was a curse that fell over Cronus that said yes, it was he too that would be overthrown by his own child. So from that point on, he ruled with fear, always looking behind him, always wondering and planning and trying to prevent this prophecy from coming true. So, with this, he made a horrifying decision. Every time his wife, Rhea, gave birth, Cronus swallowed each of his children one by one. He devoured Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, trapping them all inside his body. Rhea not only was heartbroken, she started planning herself. When she became pregnant with her sixth child, she said to herself, I'm not allowing this to happen anymore. So she fled to the island of Crete, where she gave birth in secret to a baby boy named Zeus. To trick Cronus, she wrapped a stone in swaddling cloth and gave it to Cronus, and of course, he swallowed the stone, thinking again that there's not going to be any problem with any of his children taking over for him one day. Well, Zeus was hidden away in Crete, and he was cared for by nymphs. He was cared for by a magical goat. And yes, warriors throughout this time period made noises so Cronus couldn't hear the baby's cries. Well, Zeus grew up, he grew strong, and the time came, he was ready to overthrow his father, to defeat his father. He needed help. So he got Metis, the goddess of wisdom. She helped put together this powerful drink, and he got Cronus to drink it. And with that, he vomited up all of his children that he had swallowed. They were alive and fully grown. Out came Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. The prophecy was almost here. The universe was now divided. On one side, there were the Titans, led by Cronus, and on the other side, there were the Olympians, led by Zeus. What followed was a war that was so huge and vast and violent that it shook the foundations of everything. All over, everywhere. For 10 years, the two sides battled. Gods hurled mountains, seas boiled, the sky cracked with fire. Neither side was winning. The Titans were powerful and they were ancient, but the Olympians were younger, faster, and growing stronger each and every day. But Zeus realized something crucial. They couldn't win this war alone, so he journeyed down into the depths of Tartarus and freed the beings that Cronus, his dad, had once imprisoned, the one-eyed Cyclops and those Hecatonchires. Grateful for their freedom, they both pledged loyalty to Zeus. The Cyclops made weapons for Zeus, the thunderbolt. To Poseidon, they gave the tridents. To Hades, they gave him this magical helmet that gave him invincibility. He was able to become invisibles. The Hecatonchires, with their 100 arms and 50 heads, right? Well, they were able to hurl boulders like rain. And at this point, this is when the war turned. Zeus threw his thunderbolts, lighting up the sky on fire. Poseidon shattered the earth and flooded the battlefields. Hades, moving quietly, unseen, he struck from the shadows. And of course, the Hecatonchires, they bombarded the Titans with endless storms of stone. At last, the Titans were overwhelmed and defeated. Most of the Titans were thrown back into Tartarus. They were bound in chains, and they were in prison forever. The Hecatoncheires, well, they were set up as their guards, ensuring that they could never escape. Some of the Titans, like Oceanus, did not fight, so they were spared. Others, like Prometheus, who will live for another day and be very important in our next Greek mythology story, well, he would later on remain free for a time. With the war over, Zeus and his siblings stood as ruler of everything, the cosmos, the earth, all of the known universe. But they had to decide who was going to lead, who was going to be the ruler of all rulers. So, of course, they picked straws. Well, first, Hades. He drew first. He was given the underworld. Poseidon drew next. He took command of the sea. And finally, it was Zeus who picked last. He became the ruler of the sky and the ruler of all the gods. And this marked the beginning of the age of the Olympian gods that we recognize today. But even in victory, the myth carries a warning. The Titans fell because they ruled through fear. Cronus fell because he tried to outrun his own destiny. And Zeus, though wiser, would face prophecies of his own. You see, Greek mythology begins not as a simple story of good defeating evil, but as a cycle, power rising, power fearing, and ultimately power falling one day. And it's from this great first war of the gods that every later story in myth, heroes, monsters, mortals, and fate itself ultimately would follow. Friends, thanks for staying with me on this journey for the first story, the origin story of Greek mythology, the Titans against the Olympians. We will have plenty more stories of Greek mythology, the best and most well-known and most interesting. So please reach out to me at kevmok21@gmail.com. And as always, it's much appreciated if you rate and give me a nice review, 5-star review on Apple Podcast. Until next time, have fun and keep learning.